dig yet another new hole? Every year we invest more than 10,000 men. How do you expect us to bother any more men, power just to carry out the God's will? Hey, this is true. However, even if the country of Shang has no more men to spare, there should be plenty of in neighboring countries. The Zhao people at the west are well developed, and there is the Qiang, Gu, and Sing to the north. They have yet to understand what it means to serve the gods. You mean Tian is ordering me to send a punitive expedition against these countries and to confiscate all the resources for my own use? Ha ha! Indeed, your valor has no equal under the heavens. At the head of 10,000 powerful soldiers, you can defeat all the surrounding countries in one fell swoop. It is always reinforcing and rewarding for an author when the publisher of a book requests another edition. I have now had this pleasure for 5 times after the first edition of this atlas was published 34 years ago in 1975. Previous edition as well as this edition have benefited greatly by the many suggestions from colleagues and especially students. Students often approach this in a subtle manner. First, the student may say how much he or she has learned from the book and give praise to the nature and color of the figures, and then point out a mistaken label in one of the figures that may not have caught my eye. Of course, I am always grateful for these suggestions. This edition I have added my new figures, for example, 14 new figures on my plate dealing with the brachial plexus. At the same time, a few figures that did not prove to be excellent teaching items have been removed. Perhaps the most important change in the book is the addition of a significant number of X-rays, CT scans, and ultrasound scans. I am most grateful to Edward J. H. Nathaniel, MD, PhD, Emeritus Professor at the University of Winnipeg School of Medicine in Canada, for providing at least 15 figures of clinical significance. Several figures also were contributed by Dr. G. L. Calburn, Emeritus Professor from the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta, Georgia. I have also had the pleasure of discussion with Ms. Dr. James D. Collins, Professor of Radiologic Science here at UCLA. I thank Dr. Konstanty Karakosis, Professor of Surgery and Chief of Surgical Oncology at the University of Buffalo in Buffalo, New York, for the use of several of his figures and for comments and the clinical importance of several plates. Certain X-ray from Dr. Lothar Wiki's 6th English edition of Atlas Radiologic Anatomy, edited by Dr. Anna Taylor here at UCLA, were also used. There are more than 200 plates of the clinical importance in this atlas, and I have benefited greatly from my discussion and collaboration with Professor Gerald Buckbird, medical doctor, MD, professor of cardiac surgery here at UCLA, and the late Dr. F. Torrent Gassup from Madrid, Spain, on the progressive unfolding of cardiac muscle as shown in plate 186. These studies have given insightful information on the manner by which the heart muscle develops and matures. Most of the figures in this atlas come from Subota atlases, recent editions of which have been published by Professor Ara Putz in Munich, Germany, and Professor Ara Paps in Hanover, Germany. My deepest appreciation to these two brilliant anatomists knows no bounds. The German edition of Sabota have been recently reproduced as the 14th English edition in 2006. A number of drawings, some of which were also used in the 5th edition, were made by a former resident artist here at UCLA, Miss Jill Penkers. I am most grateful for her artistic creativity. I am most indebted to the editors at Limpicott Williams at Wilkins in Baltimore, especially to Miss Crystal Taylor, with whom I have interacted for more than 20 years on several earlier editions of this atlas. Miss Julie Mortal-Balno, the product manager of this edition here at UCLA, I am privileged to have worked with outstanding associates who from gross anatomy faculty for both medical and dental school at the university. These includes Dr. Shirley Mitten and chairperson of the anatomy division, and Dr. Robert Trelease, Richard Byrd, Joseph Miller, Elena Stark, Yao Shu Ling, Jonathan Wiscott, Kwapang Gudo, Zampai, David Holder, Anna Taylor, Robin Fisher, Charles Umstel, Francesco Chipelli, and Jack Seldmeyer. German is hard to pronounce. Dr. Seldmeyer is now on the faculty of the Louisiana State University School of Medicine in New Orleans. In my 57 years of active teaching here at the UCLA, collectively these anatomies are the finest anatomies colleagues I have ever worked with. Finally, about no means least, I must say that my wife Julie has been a steadfast inspiration to me in my academic life, and I am eternally grateful to her. Carmine D. Clementi, Los Angeles, California, October 2009. Preface. From the preface to the 5th edition, I continue to observe the use of this atlas in the anatomy classroom, the laboratory here at UCLA Center for Health Science, and many suggestions I have received over the past 6 years from students and from friends around the world have been incorporated in this edition. Further students have convinced me a special edition on the cranial nerves will be helpful to them. This is how now been included on a series of dramatic drawings, patterns, after grants, and other artists, along with a number of figures relevant to the cranial nerves, have been collected in a group of 29 plates at the end of the neck head section. Most of the new cranial nerve drawings were done by Miss Jill Pankhurst several years ago when she was the resident artist in the Department of Anatomy here. In addition to these, several new pieces of art have been included in this atlas. Among the new illustrations in this edition are modified replacements of the 9 remaining illustrations in the 4th edition that originated from the controversial Atlas Topographical Human Anatomy by Professor Pankoff. These new color illustrations were expertly rendered by the medical illustrators of Anatomical Chat Company bracket open ACC bracket closes David Rennie. By far, however, my deepest appreciation is extended to Professor Ara Putz in Munich and Ara Pops in Hanover, Germany, for the exceedingly creative contribution for the 21st German and 13th English edition of the Sobata Atlas of Human Anatomy. More than 325 figures in their most recent two-volume set are the principal new drawing on which this edition is based. The other figures are ones that were used in my 4th edition. I am responsible for all the notes that accompany all of the figures, and many mistakes that may be found in these are mine and those of no one else. I will be most grateful to any student or professor that may have suggested or who may identify errors if these were transmitted to me here in Los Angeles. My new clinical related plates have been added to those in the 4th edition. This atlas now contains more than 150 plates that are of direct clinical importance. These are listed in the front page of the book, and they include surface anatomy, radiograph, many of which come from the outstanding collective of Professor L. Wick of Vienna, MRIs, CT scans, arteriograms, lymphangiograms, bronchiograms, and even a series of arthroscopic image of the knee joint. These have been added because of the increasing emphasis on the clinical relevance to the teaching of the anatomy and has become common in medical schools, not only in the United States but in many other countries as well. One of the plates, number 146, is based on the work of Dr. R. Torrent Guy Apps of the Madrid and Gerald Buckerberg of UCLA here in Los Angeles. There are many who have helped to make this atlas possible. Among them are Miss Brentley Sun, Miss Chrysler Taylor, and Kathleen Skogner, the Miss Cheryl Stringfield at Lippincott, Williams and Wilkins in Baltimore, and of course many at the collection of Urban Fisher. I am especially grateful to Dr. Konstantin Karakosis, Professor of Surgery and Chief of Surgical Oncology at the University of Buffalo in Buffalo, New York, for those recommendations and comments on the clinical importance of several of the plate. Perhaps most of all, my continuing gratitude goes to Julie, my wife, who has helped me both at the computer and in being considerate for all the time it has taken me to do this manuscript. Time and could have been given to some of her interests. Carmine D. Clement, Los Angeles, California, February 2006. As we are the senses connecting our neurons to other neurons in our environment. Ha ha ha! The gods are greedy, has already become corrupted with madness. Ha ha ha! The gods' greed has already become corrupted with madness. Ah? For 30 long generations, ever since the founding of the Shang dynasty, my ancestors have served the gods. They toil hard without thanks. And for what reason exactly, I do not understand. Selfish genes have come to promote reciprocal social behaviors in superorganismal structures, effectively discarding the notion of survival of the fittest. To rephrase, this is the fabulous opportunity. You will become the founder of an imperial dynasty that rules all under the heavens, and by doing so, you will bring a vast population to submit to the gods. Tian will definitely be very pleased. Ha ha ha! The gods' greed has already become corrupted with madness. Ah? For 30 long generations, ever since the founding of the Shang dynasty, my ancestors have served the gods, the toil hard without thanks. And for what reason exactly, I do not understand. Say, I am quite perplexed. Humans naturally fear the gods. There is no need for reason. Your ancestors each fulfilled their duties honorably to the best of their abilities, and you aren't planning to betray your ancestors' legacy. My ancestors failed to provide me with a good model. I will not follow them. I will create new rules. Burn, burn, burn. Chinese, Chinese, Chinese. Such as compulsive labeling and the psychological need to impose expectations. Practical labeling underpins all forms of interactions in our daily lives. But by psychologically labeling the self as internal and the environment as external, we constrain our own neurochemical processes